Well, we're back. Saturday night. This is the main show. We're going to try to do a few during the week, but we'll see how that goes. This is the Politics and Prepper podcast over at TalkShoe.com. The call ID number is 120315. Tonight, we got several different topics to go through. I was going to do a lot on the Agenda 21, but my new equipment didn't come in. I wanted to do some different things with it, and I can't do it without the equipment. And so we're going to try to maybe get that done next weekend. So for now, I made some show notes that I was going to do earlier this week, and different reasons didn't get there. So we'll just do what we're going to do earlier this week and start on it tonight. Skippy's on tonight. Guest 2. Put his name in there, but sorry. It's scrolled off the screen, and I think it was like Christian. Hopefully I'm right. And I wanted to start out tonight.
Yeah, that's right. It's Christian.
Yeah, okay. I wanted to start tonight with a little bit more about me and how I got where I'm at. Just to let you know, give you a little bit of my background, let you start knowing where I'm at, where I'm coming from, why I'm doing this. So I'll just start out with, I'm struggling with Agenda 21, but the more I go into it, the more I understand it, and the more I think we got big problems. But I think a lot of people probably have the same problem because you talk to people and talk about some of the different parts of Agenda 21, which I hope to break down over the next few shows a little bit, make it a little bit more easy to grasp, I guess would be a good word for it. And I guess I ought to turn my dang TV off because it's probably screwing up my recording. Oh, there we go. The part about struggling with this, I think most of us were brought up to be good people. And I think the country has showed a history of being good people, helpful people, God-fearing. Even if you're not God-fearing, I know a lot of people that don't believe in God that are still good people, that try to treat people right, try to do the right thing for whatever reason. I'm not going to go into that part of it, but it's hard for people to grasp how can this country get to what Agenda 21 is talking about, because you'll have no rights, you'll have no property, you'll be like a servant, back to kings and queens ruling the country, only it'll be divided up into different parts. You won't have any rights. Whatever they say is going to be what is the law. There won't be any law, really, because they'll just do whatever they want to. And, this is the land of the free, the home of the brave, the home of George Washington. George Washington refused to be king, even though people would want him to, because he understood what absolute power was about and how it corrupted absolutely. I know you've heard that term, but it's been proven year in and year out over the generations, over multitude of centuries. You look back through history, there's millions and millions of people who died, and they're all because of governments, or if you want to call kings and dictators and whatever governments, but so there's plenty of history there. If you don't believe me, go back and look. I'm not going to get into all the different ones. It doesn't take long to figure out. If you know anything about history, the governments kill people, and that's where most of the people die that are not of natural causes. But anyway, back to George Washington. George Washington and the founders of the country, they understood a lot of this, which is why it irks me when I hear a lot of liberals sitting there talking about the Constitution's antiquated, it's outdated, it's not any good. No, it's great. They did it knowing what absolute power could do, because they were underneath absolute power, pretty much. They had the Magna Carta and some stuff, but basically, whatever the king or queen wanted, whatever the ruling class wanted, they just could do. If they wanted to kill you, they killed you. You didn't have to ask questions. They didn't like what you said, didn't like what you didn't work hard enough, you looked at them wrong, whatever. You're gone. That's why, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, we had great forefathers that understood that. They lived it. But don't tell me they didn't know what they were talking about. Don't tell me the Constitution is not any good. It's old. It's antiquated. That's BS. The greatest generation, World War II. We're losing so many of those. They understood what sacrifice was. They understood after fighting World War II what a dictator could do, what somebody with absolute power could do. Just go out and kill millions of people for the hell of it because they didn't like what they thought, what they did, how they acted. I'm in Texas. We had the Alamo, and that's why my little sign here on the show, you'll see a picture of the little avatar. It's a picture of the Alamo. I'm not too far out of San Antonio. Not that I like the politics of San Antonio anymore, but it used to be a nice little town, and the people get mad when you call it a little town. It's a big city. It's one of the biggest. But it didn't used to have that feel. And now there's people that actually get mad when you call it a little town, and it's not anymore. They don't even the politics isn't little town. It's gone liberal. They do all kinds of stupid stuff. I don't live there, so I don't even do business in there if I don't have to anymore. It's only about 20 miles away. But anyhow, kind of getting off the topic here. We had the Alamo. Those guys gave their lives for freedom. And then, for those of you that don't know about the Alamo, I'm not going to go into all that. But for those of you that do, you understand what I'm talking about. And guess who? I see you in the chat, but if I get over there and start working with the chat, I get lost. So I think Skippy will kind of keep an eye on that, and if you come up with something that's interesting or important, or he feels like might be brought up, Skippy, you can jump in anytime you need to or want to. So back to I'm struggling with this. How can this kind of thing happen in a country like ours? I think that's where a lot of people are having problems, and they think maybe you're nuts when you bring some of these topics up. They can't just come out and come in your house and search and do whatever they want. They can't just pull you over on the side of the road for no reason. They can't beat you up just because they want to. They're telling like Illinois, I think I mentioned this last week. Illinois, they got some schools up there that are telling the parents, you can't send food with your kids. They can only eat what we give them. That's ridiculous. And I think people in Illinois need to stand up and do something about it. But this kind of thing is happening all over the country, and worse. We've got troops working inside the country. They're not supposed to be used inside our country, but they are. We've got troops from other countries inside our country, but they are. And there's plenty of proof out there. Don't believe me, go look at it. Find it on the internet. There's plenty of stuff out there. Not real hard to figure out. So when you're talking to somebody, and I'm sitting there, when I first got going here, like Al's not here this week, but last week he was here, and I was not sure whether to thank him or go up to him and smack him upside the head for getting me onto Agenda 21, because I was perfectly happy knowing that things weren't right, but they weren't as bad as he kind of told me about, but then I started checking into it, and it's looking more and more like, he knew what he was talking about. There's a lot bigger problems than what we thought. But people are going, it's like, is this real? God, struggle with it, and that's me, but I'm not struggling with it as much as I used to. I'm finding too much stuff out. I'm finding too many videos where, like, it was one, I guess it was about a year ago, there was a man, and I think he had some mental problems. If I understand the story correctly, the cops knew he had some mental problems, and they asked him a question or told him to put his hands up and put him on his knees. He was confused. He asked which one you want. Next thing you know, things went a little awry. I didn't see anything in the video to suggest or warrant them beating him to death. And it was just hard to watch, I think some of it was bad training. When you're down on the ground and you hit somebody or put your knee in them or whatever, all that pressure goes straight into the body. The body doesn't absorb it and move back away from it. But there's more and more reports of that kind of thing happening. And the other day, well, let me go here. One of the reasons I'm where I'm at, because I've had some problems with officials, even though I ought to stay away from the word officials. They're no officials. They're elected servants of the people. They're supposed to be there doing what's right for us in the Constitution, and they're not. A lot of them aren't. But years ago, I was a young married man, and got pulled over for a DWI. I didn't really get pulled over for a DWI. I had the problem with the guy on the road. I was newlywed, a new kid on the way, so I decided instead of confronting this jerk, I'll just keep driving. He kept following me around, kept following me every place I went. Anyway, he tagged my truck with his truck, and not bad, but I still didn't pull over. I kept going. Well, anyway, make a long story short, I ended up getting somebody to call the police in. Police showed up, found out that the guy that this was against, not me, the other guy, was a friend of the first cop that got there. The cop walks up straight to my truck, tells me to get out of the truck. I'm under arrest for DWI. I didn't even have a whole beer. There's no way I was drunk. He could not have smelled the alcohol because the wind was directly in my face from him, so there's no way he could have smelled it because he never even got within 10 feet of the truck till after I got out. He didn't see any of the driving, so he couldn't have seen me driving bad or anything, and then I wasn't driving bad because I wasn't drunk. When I got out, he started throwing me around. And I'm a big guy, but I behaved myself. I just let him do it. Well, we got to court and everything, and I was found innocent, 100% innocent. They tried to manipulate things, and they even told my lawyer, because I didn't cooperate with them the way they wanted me to and do exactly what they said, which meant that I didn't do their breathalyzer, because at the time the technology was as such that I knew, because I've got an electronics background, that you can set those things if you don't do them right, or you can do it on purpose, to where a person that's never had any alcohol in their life could read drunk. And back then that was true. I'm not sure about the ones now. But I told them they could get somebody in and take blood. I told them they could do that. They wouldn't do it. They tried to confuse me on the video, which didn't work. And the attorney told my attorney, he said, just because he's a stubborn cowboy, we're going to prosecute him all the way. And there was no reason for it. I'm going to find out later, this policeman it was a joke in the courthouse about how bad this guy was on DWIs. But I'm a young man with a new child on the way, and it cost me thousands of dollars to work out. And how many of us make a lot of money when we're newlyweds, and young? I certainly didn't. Well, that's kind of soured me and made me think about police a little bit differently, because I had known some police, and I always knew, there's good police and there's bad police, and there's good police that have bad days. This guy wasn't one of them. And then the district attorney started pulling that stuff on me. So it made me start looking at things. And over the years, I want just been a little bit more cautious about, trusting what I'm told, being the little servant, the little follower, the blind follower that does whatever they're supposed to do. And that's a little bit about that. I've got some other stories, but I think I'll either hold back on them for another time or later on in the show. Skippy, you got anything to add? Are you there okay right now?
No, I've been reading over the Agenda 21 document from the United Nations.
Yeah.
Have you read it at all?
I haven't read all of it. But there's quite a few pages. I mean, it's a.
I know. It's 351 pages.
Sorry, guys. We got some more guests in here, and I just realized that I didn't have the chat open for them, but they're unblocked now, so they can chat if they want to. Go ahead.
No. I was looking for some material to pull out of here to spark some conversation. And it seems that a lot of it is very kind of vague. Really, it's when they start talking about. I'm trying to come up with the term right now. They used. God, I can't think of the term. Oh well, I'll remember the term right now. But there's a term that they use a lot, and when I come up with it, I'll come back to that. But blank here. Don't you hate when I do that? I'm sitting here thinking, and I wish I would have come on tonight because he's really into this, and I still got a little ways to go, and I don't want to get too deep into it tonight, but. Well, it seems like it's a pretty massive initiative. It's Agenda 21.
Well, there's a lot of videos out there too that break it down, and go over it. There's some real long ones and the shorter ones. The paperwork is really, there's a lot of pages there.
But the thing about it is, our government run amok, wanting to control everything in our lives. It just seems like this is more. It doesn't seem that shocking to me that they want to control all these things even more, just because the United Nations says it. And I don't know which came first. Whether if this is kind of driving that even more, or if it's vice versa, that our need for that is kind of led to the United Nations.
Well, I think a lot of it's been there for a long time. Before the Agenda 21 really got started, it's been there. There's been people with ideas about, there's too many people. I'm God. We got to control this. I'm God. I get to make the decisions. These people die. These people don't. We don't got no use for these people. They don't produce. They're not smart enough. They're handicapped. And they're talking about all that. They have to have, they want to put zones out there, and they get a lot of environmentalists mixed into the group because they're going, well, we have to get all these people out of these zones, and we just have to have Mother Nature have hers because people are bad. We're destroying the earth. We haven't treated our earth the best, but I think we're starting to come around and understand. But that doesn't mean you take everybody's land away, stack them in big buildings and in big cities in certain areas. If you don't fit into the group, if you're handicapped, then you can't perform. If you're too old, too young, you just die. When they start talking about killing 25 million people just in the United States, that they've got to go because Mother Nature can't sustain them, it's that right there tells you something. Tells you what kind of people we're dealing with.
That's what I was looking for in this document, whether they say that kind of blatantly or if they.
Well, even if it's, I don't remember if it's in there because, like I said, I haven't read it all. But even if it's not in there saying that, there's some terms in there that mean that. And if you go back and you look into the people that wrote it, were in meetings together, that support it openly, they say it themselves.
Right. Oh yeah, I'm not suggesting that these things aren't discussed and weren't discussed. But I was just wondering how obvious they were being with this document. It almost seems like the document's kind of vague for a reason. But there's some interesting categories. Strengthening the role of major groups. And there's actually a section for global action for women towards sustainable and equitable development. Because like they want to, even children and youth, sustainable development. And then here's a good one: strengthening the role of workers in their trade unions.
Yeah, and they want to, like the Soviet Union used to figure out real young what you were going to be. All right? And they're talking about that kind of stuff. And they're doing that in the schools. They've been doing that in schools a long time. They, come there, you talk to the counselor, well, you ought to be this and you ought to be that, which, they're just kind of giving you guidance. And maybe that's all it is with some of them, but maybe not with some of them. Maybe that's kind of what the plan is all along, because they'd like to hit us with, well, we're going to do this, but people aren't ready for it, so we'll do it a little bit at a time. And what they've been to with liberalism, that's what they've been to us all along.
They were teaching my kids about global warming a year or two ago. That really tipped me off.
Well, I'm having some problem with your audio, Skippy, but
okay.
I'm getting most of it. But that people, I think we can actually use that against them. They take something a little bit of time, a little bit here, a little bit there, get people used to hearing about it, get people used to seeing it. Well, we can do that with this kind of talk right here with Agenda 21. We get enough people hearing about it, they'll start to think, well, maybe it's not so crazy. Then maybe a little bit more, we'll pick up on it and start looking into it and finding out about it. And I think I've already seen a lot of it. Just in the short time I've been researching, I'm just, I'm sure some of it's because I'm researching, so I'm finding more of it. But I see more of it, more people going, oh, I just found out about it. And people that have been talking about it for a long time are saying the same thing. There's a lot more people starting to understand. And, the other day, I think I told you this story, but I got pulled over by a police officer for my ticket. He gave me a ticket. I'd forgotten to put a new sticker on my truck. And I tell this story because this was just a little bit before I started looking more into this. And I've always had a little bit of problems with some police officers taking their position a little bit too far, thinking they're more important than what they are. Anyway, he pulls me over, and I'm looking in the mirror as he's walking to the back from the back towards me, and my God, did he look like Barney Fife. And for y'all that don't know who Barney Fife was, go back and watch the Andy Griffith Show. He got all puffed up, when he was getting ready to do something official and write a ticket or something. He got all puffed up, walking, I'm bad, and God, this guy, I had to hold myself from laughing at him. And he gets up to the door, and he's got this attitude. And, I know they've got to give an air of authority, especially the new ones, and he was fairly new. And I think they go a little bit too far with it. But, God, I think once he found out that he wasn't impressing me, he kind of relaxed a little bit. At least that's what I thought at the time, because then he took my driver's license, went back to the car, got back out, and did the same thing over again, all puffed up, his hands on his hips, walking, all erect. And I'm glad I got out of there without laughing at him, because he probably would have found something else wrong. But no, I deserved the ticket, so he was right, But now I had, this goes back kind of to how I got here. My wife hurt her back a few years back, and it steadily got worse. And we were here one night, and she couldn't move. I mean, the pain was so bad she couldn't move. So finally got an ambulance over here. Well, they're asking questions and they're checking her out, and this one police officer, going through all this stuff, and I look back a few minutes later, and he's walking down my hall, looking into the other rooms. And I'm going, what are you looking through my house for? I'm thinking this. I didn't say anything yet. I'm thinking this, and I watched him for a second, but I was really kind of distracted with my wife and what was going on there, and then the other police officer asked me some questions, and I said, well, hold on a minute. And I walked back through the hall, and I walked around him, and I stood in front of him, and I told him, you got no reason to be back here. You got no right to be back here. Go outside. Get out of my house. Because he was giving me this attitude, And he didn't say anything, but I could tell by his reaction and his facial expression and everything that he was a little upset that I was, not impressed with his authority and was ordering him around in my own house. I found out some more stuff about him later. He was even worse than I thought. But the other police officer that was in the house, which was his boss, I told him, the guy again, I said, get out of my house now. He goes, well, I don't have to. Yes, you do, or I'm going to throw you out. And the other police officer steps in and he goes, you need to listen to Mr. Letzinger. You don't need to be back here. Get out of his house. Well, the other police officer was a friend of mine. We grew up together. Let me had Guest 5 come in here. Hello, Guest 5. Anyway, that's the kind of thing that gets you thinking. And then I'm hearing more and more reports about police officers stepping across the line, thinking they're too big, and some of them being trained that way. And from what it looks like, a lot of them, they're looking for police officers to be that way, to be more aggressive, to cow down the people, to start seeing it, get used to it, because that's where they're going with it. They're going to be fully under control. You're not going to have any rights. Be guilty and still proven innocent. I can't do that. I can't sit here and do that. I can't sit here and sit back and not watch that kind of stuff anymore. I've always had a problem with it, and now it's getting worse. There's plenty of videos out there of abuse. There's plenty of information. A lot of these politicians will sit there and tell you what Obama the other day said. I don't have to ask Congress for permission to go to war. I've got the UN. The UN gave me the authority. Guys, they don't have the authority to tell us to go to war. They don't have the authority to tell us not to go to war. Obama has to go to Congress. Now, we've been doing this for quite a while now. They're supposed to go to Congress, and what is it, since World War II? It's happened several times where president goes to war, and maybe they call it a police action, and then Congress says no, and then they end up going to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court says, well, you've got the authority to take their money away from them. You can stop the funding. Well, they don't do it because you got military fighting. You can't stop giving them ammo and have them hurt, so they don't do it. And they're working on that now. There's a couple of congressmen trying to get something passed to make that kind of thing happen. But my God, Obama had the nerve to say, I don't have to have your permission. The UN has given me that authority. No. And no treaties give you that authority either, because our Constitution trumps them. We didn't, and if I remember right, we didn't sign anything saying that we would go along with the UN, and we didn't, give him the authority to just do what the UN says.
Now, hold on, Steve. You forgot something, too. He's also the Nobel Peace Prize winner, so that gives him the authority to declare war on anybody he wants.
Yeah, Nobel Peace Prize. That was such a freaking farce. Oh, God. There's no... from now on, when somebody gets to know... Well, it was bad enough when...
Jimmy Carter.
Yeah.
Did Jimmy Carter win?
I think Carter did, but I'm thinking about Clinton's vice president.
at least he did stuff to maybe to give the illusion that he's for peace. At least he didn't even want to attack the Iranians when he had hostages. Yeah. So he didn't hurt anybody.
Well, I noticed that Rip Reed 420 he goes, and this is back on the topic we were on a while ago when I said that just in the United States they're talking about we have to get rid of 25 million people, and they're talking about killing them. All right, at 25 million, if it's the fan like they want, 25 million, it's not a big deal. That'll do that easy, and it's probably true. But you know what? Part of what looks like the plan is to break down the economy, and we've seen that. What have they been doing? You can't drill here. You can't drill there. You off the coast. You can't put the pipeline in. You can't do this. Taking all this bunch of land out of production where you can't drill wells on it. And multiple of other things they're doing to screw up the economy, spending too much money. They want to bring it down, just like they're doing overseas. And this is all planned. This isn't just Obama. He's just a puppet. But I think he enjoys it. But it's planned. They got to bring down the economy. So you look for the government to help you. Well, I'm going to give up my rights for this because the government's going to help me. Look what we did with flying since 9/11. Oh yeah, if you'll protect me, you can grab my parts, feel them up, squeeze them, do whatever you want to. You can put something, check up inside me and see if there's anything there. I won't fly. I'm not going to fly again. But it's not even there anymore. It's not just there. They're doing it on the streets. They're doing it at bus stations. And they don't have to ask you permission. They just do it. And if you give them a hard time, you're not going to like the consequences. There's been people beat up for it. People have been put in the hospital because they refuse to have it done. Now, I don't think it usually goes that far. But I tell you what, if somebody like the TSA comes up to you on the street and wants to search you and you put up too much of a struggle, how much you want to bet you're going to get roughed up and probably in jail. And then if you struggle too much, you're probably going to get roughed up to the point where it could be very lethal because it's happened. But anyway, back, we've given up. I mean, why did we have to go that far with all this to be protected on the plains when Israel does a better job than we do, and they don't do that? They check up on the people ahead of time and see who's getting on the plane, and when you go get your ticket, they kind of check you out and find out, what kind of person you are. When they've got trained people there to kind of interview you as you're coming through, ask little questions here and there, if things don't sound quite right, maybe a few more questions. They've done a really good job of stopping any problems with their planes. So why did we have to go so far? Because of power. They want the power. They think that we're idiots, we can't take care of ourselves, and we keep letting them do that. Now, there's even some sitting there saying a lot of this stuff is being caused by our governments. They plan this stuff. The FBI, CIA, they make a lot of things happen so you'll come back to them and say, hey, protect me. We'll give up our rights. We can't do it. Not if you want to be free and have your rights. And if you want to be one of those that, whatever you say, I'll do whatever you want, whatever kind of job you want. Just feed me. I don't need freedom. I'll be careful what I say. You tell me what to say. Yeah, you want to live that way? Go ahead. Why don't you find another country and go live someplace else that has that kind of shit? We don't want it here. I don't want my kids living that way. Ridiculous. And I'm hearing a lot of people kind of getting harassed by talking the way I'm talking. I don't care. I'm old enough now. I'm not raising my kids anymore. They're adults. You come get me, you kill me, you take me away. It's worth it. There's been millions of people died for this country and for rights and throughout the history. If it's me, it's me. I'm not going to shut up. I'm not going without a fight. I hope we never have to go to a fight. That's one of the reasons I'm here. That's how I got here. I don't want things to get that bad. I don't want people to die. We don't need that. We can do it to start in your own local area, wherever you live, your local politics. If you've got people like that in your politics, work against them. Try to get them kicked out. Vote against them. Work for your state level. Spread the word. Check up on this stuff before you do it, so you feel comfortable with it. There's a lot of stuff out there. A lot of stuff out there. Well, I think that's it as far as those topics. There's something I wanted to get out there tonight, and because this is politics and preppers, and part of survival. There's lots of different things about survival. You got to have your food, your water, and stuff. But think about your health. If you get in a bad situation, you got to be out. You got to leave your home. Even people in New Orleans, if the healthier ones, I'm sure, did better than the people who weren't healthy. The ones that got stranded in the dome down there. If you get caught in a situation, hopefully you're already prepared. You've got your food, you got your water, you got your backpack, whatever you need. Maybe you're lugging out, so you got your backpack with all your stuff, or maybe you're going to bug out in the car and get out. You got your stuff ready. Maybe you've got your home ready to bug in. You're going to stay at home, and then depends on what the situation is. But think about your health. Your health will help you get through survival situations. If you're healthy, it'll be less stressful, physically and mentally. I'm not going to go into the health topic tonight. I just wanted to, get people thinking about that. Self-defense. Self-defense is not just guns, not just weapons, man-made weapons. It's your hands, your feet, your mind. There's a lot of self-defense courses out there, and I'm not going to give any names right now. I'm not going to promote one. I'm not going to tell you not to do one. But here's something that came across the board the other night. Is some of these places are teaching you how to defend yourself, and they're teaching you lethal moves, which is fine. But you need to be taught how to use those lethal moves and what those lethal moves can do to a person. If you use a lethal move when you are in a situation that doesn't really call for it, you could really get yourself in trouble. A lot of times, I don't know really how to say this, but I'm going to just do my best. A lot of times when you get this training, you're feeling more confident. Maybe somebody hasn't explained to you, this move will do damage that you don't understand. Especially if you get them down, if you put a move and get somebody on the ground and you use a lot of these moves on them, a lot of these hits, when they're on the ground, all that shock from that blow goes into that body, and it goes nowhere else. That the body doesn't get a chance to move away from it. If you hit somebody standing up, some of the power is lost because you're backing up. Blow, you just from the blow, your body moves away from it. Your body doesn't absorb all of it. But when they're on the ground, it can kill very easily. So be careful about who you get self-defense training from. If they're not teaching you just how bad some of this stuff can be and when to use it and when not to use it, then you need to be away from that person. And of course, your food, your water, your shelter, those are all things that you need. And you have to look into what kind of situations you might be in. Look at the area where you live. Look at the roads. Are they going to flood? in a major event, or the bridge is going to collapse in a major event? Will there be a way to get out? You've got a vehicle. Will you be able to use that vehicle to get out? Will the roads be too crowded? You got a four-wheel drive. Well, just because you got a four-wheel drive doesn't mean you can go across the river with it. So, look at these things. Make sure you have several different ways of being prepared. Be prepared to stay at home. Be prepared to leave. When you leave, be prepared to figure out whether you can, if you can't drive, know how to walk out, where to go, how to get out of that area. Have a destination. And we're really, I'm touching on a lot of these topics, and we'll go into more detail, but really that self-defense one and the health is I wanted to get people thinking about. There's a lot of information out there about the food, the water, shelter. You can find it anywhere. But I think a lot of places are missing on the health and the self-defense sides of it. They can get you in trouble, and they can help you out, depending on how well you've learned to use them and how far you've gone with them. But that's it for me tonight. I got nothing else on the agenda. So we could either visit for a little bit if you got something going. We can look at some comments or questions. If you got something you want to add, if you found anything on the internet there you want to add, we can go a little bit further.
Yeah, nothing specific to what you're saying. I would encourage people to relate to the health issue or bugging out. I think more people. I think if we've lost a lot of our knowledge of how to prepare foods, how to capture, how to kill something and eat it. I don't know how to. I know how to go to the grocery store and buy a steak and cook it, but I don't know how to kill a deer and gut it. And I guess I could figure it out if I had.
Well, yeah, you can. You can. You might not do it right, but there's a couple things about it. When you get one, you really ought to do it right, because if you get that food contaminated and you don't cook it properly, it can get you in trouble.
Yeah, well, right. But that's my whole point. I imagine, if I cut the intestines or something, I'm probably going to be at risk or something. But my point is, I think it's just good for people to have skills like that, because you never know what may happen in the future, and to be able to do basic things like that.
Yeah. Well, I think the health part is something that's really, really people not thinking about. You're overweight. You eat too much. You're eating foods that are bad, and that's something we're going to go into later. That's kind of why I bring it up tonight, because your health is actually part of Agenda 21, and there's a lot of evidence showing that a lot of what's going on with health issues, overweight, undernutrition, diseases that are being caused by bad diets, bad medicine, bad practices, that's all going to fold into this later. We're early in the show. Hopefully there's going to be a whole lot more, and we'll start delving into them. Right now I'm trying to touch on some topics, and then we'll come back and we'll really start delving into them a little bit more. Hopefully I'll have my new equipment next week, because what I'm going to start doing is trying to find I'll find the names of some of these people and put faces with them and put their own words to use against them. When they talk about these things, it's not just me saying it. I'm going to give you evidence to help you motivate yourself to go find your own answers.
Yeah, the whole Agenda 21 thing is quite ironic, because it seems like everything we're doing, or maybe it's by design, everything we're doing is making us more unhealthy. And I've heard different people say that even in other countries, they don't want to import our food because it's not very, the nutrition level has gone down so much because it's being over-processed. Our lands are being overused to grow wheat or different crops, and especially like meat and things like that. All the crap we feed our cattle. The other countries like Europe, they don't want it. I don't know how much truth there is to that, but
yeah,
it's interesting we have so much natural, with the size of our country and the amount of the population we have, we have so many natural resources. I can't believe the crap we eat. If any country should be eating well, it's us.
Yeah, we've just gotten away from a lot of healthier ways that my grandparents, my parents grew up with.
Yeah, exactly.
You're trying to feed a lot of people, and people are on the go, and we're still. Here's something that just came up: taxes. Remember, my mom stayed at home and took care of us. And every once in a while, my dad was in the military. Sometimes he was away, Vietnam. Money doesn't always work out. Mom took a couple jobs here and there. Every once in a while. But most of the time, she was at home. And that's what I grew up with. Moms were home with their kids and raising the kids and, not sending them off to daycare. Now, there was some moms that worked, and you saw a lot of that. But we pay almost half of everything we make in taxes, state, local, federal. Almost half of everything we make. At least some of us do, because some of us don't pay taxes. Almost half of the country don't pay federal taxes. That is.
Yeah, but they're paying fuel taxes and they're paying.
Yeah, they're still paying other taxes, but think about it this way: if you're paying almost half of everything you make, there's taxes.
Mm-hmm.
If they lowered that to what I feel like should be about half that much, if that much, just half that much means who could stay home again and raise their own kids and not send them to daycare? Who do you think cares about your kid more, you or the people at the daycare? And I'm not saying all daycares are bad, but they don't care about your kids like you do. They don't teach them the morals that you want them taught. They'll teach the morals that they believe. And then
the other thing is, if you don't pay your taxes, they take your land.
Yeah, which really hurts me.
There's a whole another topic to get into. We don't have the right to own land. I don't know how they can pass laws for taxes.
I think it's real hard here in Texas to take your homestead for taxes. I think it's almost impossible.
You have property tax?
Yeah, we do have property tax, but I think it's almost, they can put a lien on your house, but I don't think they can take it. Now, I'm not a lawyer, and things might have changed over the years, so don't hold me to that. I mean, maybe they changed something, but I know when I was a little younger that I heard him talking about it on a legal show with one of the local lawyers, and he was saying they cannot take your house if you don't pay your taxes. They can put a lien on it, and once you die,
can they put you in jail?
They'll take it. I think they can put you in jail, but I don't think they can keep you there very long for it. But they can also put a lien where if you want to sell your house and move, well, they're gonna get their money first. But that might have all changed because a lot of things have changed over the years. But that, even if you have your property paid for, it's still not yours because Uncle Sam can rent you.
Get the payment. Yeah. I don't understand how that doesn't violate the Constitution. Yeah,
I think people have just gotten so busy just trying to make it and trying to have a life of too much stuff. And I like my stuff. I really do. So I can't, condone anybody. I mean, I can't talk too much about that. I like my computers, and I like my internet, and I like my air conditioning especially, and I like my cars, But
how do we get to a point as a nation where we just forget the rights we have? It's like how we get there. They don't teach it to us. So
they want to get rid of all that stuff. They want to get rid of all that stuff. They don't want us to have all that stuff. They want us to live in little minimum amount of room. The whatever the food they want us to have. You can't have all this stuff. You won't have money to buy all this stuff. They want to take that money, give it to other countries and other people.
Well, my point is they don't want you to know what your rights are. They don't want to teach your children or me as a child what the Constitution says, what the law is, and how the government works.
They definitely don't do that in school anymore like they did with me, because back when I was in school, they taught that. They had government class. History touched on a lot of it, the Constitution and everything, but government class did. We even had debate things where in class you talked about the different political things going on and your rights, and they taught us all that kind of stuff. They even taught us how to balance our checkbooks. I bet they don't do that in school anymore.
The only thing I can remember teaching me about how the government works is that cartoon on Saturday mornings that, the conjunction, junction, and then they had the cartoon about how the government works, right? Yeah, I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I remember that.
I don't remember anything. I did not remember learning anything about the government in school. Because I'm a little bit younger than you, but not by many years. But it might be enough years or of course it might just be that you're in Texas too. I mean, that's probably quite a difference. What they thought.
Texas is worse off than I was thinking, and we'll probably touch on that one of the times too. We're not in as good a shape as I thought here in Texas. We have a lot of problems going on with the feds and Agenda 21 in itself. So we're almost at an hour, and we were only going to do 30 minutes. But that's okay. But I'm going to call it end of the show tonight, and we'll be back next Saturday night, 10 o'clock Central Time. Y'all figure out the math wherever you live. 10 o'clock Central Time, next Saturday night, here at TalkShoe.com. Caller ID number is 120315, and this is Politics and Preppers. And I have a website, but we aren't going to deal with that. I'm going to talk about that maybe in another show. But it's not on politics. It's on prepper stuff. It's survival stuff. So we'll get on that some other time. Right now, the important thing is getting information out about some of this stuff going on. All right, so that's the end of the show tonight. We may do something during the week. There is a place here on my page at TalkShoe.com where you can get a alert when the show's coming on, because I don't during the week. I'm not going to give a time. I'm just, when everything works out and I got time, I'll do a show. And so you can subscribe here on my page at TalkShoe, get an alert on that. I did put it into iTunes. It hasn't been accepted yet, so you can't download it from there yet, but hopefully pretty soon you will. So that's the end of the show tonight. See y'all next time.
See you later.